49. Pieces of music consist of sounds and silences presented to the listener in a temporal order. A painting, in contrast, is not presented one part at a time to the viewer. There is thus no particular path that the viewer's eye must follow in order to read the painting. Therefore, an essential distinction between the experiences of hearing music and viewing paintings is that the hearing music has a temporal dimension, but viewing a painting has none. So this stimulus is saying, well, if you're viewing paintings, there's no temporal dimension. And if you're hearing music, there is a temporal dimension. And they define temporal as being presented one part at the time to the viewer. So for music, it's coming to you a little bit at a time. For a painting, they're saying, it's coming to you, I guess, all at once. Or the stimulus is saying there's no particular path that your eye must follow in order to read the painting. Okay, so we're trying to find a flaw in this argument. So let's see. A, the argument does not allow for the possibility of being immersed in experiencing a painting without being conscious of the passage of time. Is it enough to be conscious of the passage of time, or do you have to see it one part at a time? I think you have to see it one part at a time, right? For there to be a temporal order. I don't think the stimulus was ever really talking about being conscious of time. So I don't think it's A, but we can leave it open. Let's look at B. The argument is based on a very general definition of music that does not incorporate any distinction among particular styles. They don't really distinguish between music. They don't really distinguish between paintings. It is general, but does it matter that they didn't really distinguish between different types of music? Doesn't all music, you listen to it one part at a time? There isn't really any music where it's given to you all at once and you're not listening to it over time, right? So I don't think B makes sense as a criticism. Let's look at C. The argument fails to bring out the aspects of music and painting that are common to both as forms of artistic expression. Does the argument have to bring out aspects that are common to both as forms of artistic expression? No, right? It doesn't have to say how they're common. If I said dogs are smarter than cats or something, but then your argument was, well, you didn't say how they both have paws, that doesn't make sense, right? Do you have to point out ways that they're similar if you're talking about something else? Not really, right? So I don't think C's right. That's not a good flaw. D, relying on the metaphor of reading to characterize how a painting is viewed presupposes the correctness of the conclusion to be drawn on the basis of that characterization. So D is saying the author of this is relying on the metaphor reading too much, and because they mentioned reading, we're thinking about painting in a certain way. Let's see. In order to read the painting. Maybe? I don't know. Let's look at E. E, the absence of a particular path that the eye must follow does not entail that the eye follows no path. I like E because a painting, technically, you look at it one part at a time. Maybe if you're focusing on the painting, maybe you look to one corner and then another, or maybe there's a focal point in the painting and you look at the center and then you look at the sides. So maybe just because there's no one order, maybe the painting is still presented one part at a time to the viewer, even if there's no specific order that every single person follows. Because viewing a painting, you do view it over time, right? Temporal dimension basically means over time. You are viewing a painting over time. So does it matter that you're not reading the painting, that there's no particular path that every single person follows? I don't think it matters, right? There's still time while you're looking at the painting, and time exists, and you are looking at the painting over time, and maybe you're looking at different parts over time. Let's look at A again. The argument does not allow for the possibility of being immersed in experiencing a painting without being conscious of the passage of time. Why do we have to, why does this have to be a possibility, whether or not we're conscious of the passage of time, right? Does it really matter whether we realize that time is going on? Do we always have to realize that time is moving as we're listening to music? Maybe not, right? A is bringing in something that we never really talked about and isn't super related to the argument. It's not necessary for the argument to discuss. So we can cross out A. Let's look at D again. Relying on the metaphor of reading to characterize how a painting is viewed presupposes the correctness of the conclusion. Okay, let's see. The conclusion is that paintings don't have temporal dimension, music does. That's the conclusion, right? I don't know if using the word read means that we already assume that conclusion. That's really strong to say, right? Is it just because they use the word read that they assumed that the conclusion was already correct and then they drew the conclusion based on the word read? I don't think so. Read is only used here once, and I don't think it was essential for this argument. They could have just taken this word out and put in another word, right? So I don't think the word read has that big of an impact here. So I think it must be E. E would be our answer here. And just to go over it again, a particular path that the eye must follow. Just because we don't have one particular path that the eye must follow, that doesn't mean that the eye is not following a path over time, right? Maybe the viewer is still looking at the painting over time, even if they're not following a certain path over time that everyone is following. So as with music, right, and paintings, maybe you just view/listen to both over time, right? Yeah. Okay, so E would be our answer here.